If you were born in the lower middle class in America, it can be really hard to move up. I'm fortunate I've worked with a lot of families that have successfully navigated that journey, and I've learned a lot from them. So let's go for a walk, and I'm going to share with you 7 important ideas and lessons that I've learned from them. And the last 3 are the most powerful, so be sure to stay until the end. You know, in a perfect world, the likelihood of being in any of the, if we broke income earners out by 20%, by quintiles, so the lower 20%, the lower middle class, the next 20%, the middle class, the upper middle class, and then finally the wealthy. If it were a perfect world, the likelihood of you becoming, of a person landing in any of those groups would be 20%, right? 20% in each group. But unfortunately, the statistics tell a much different story in the United States. If you're a male born into the lower middle class, that lower 20%, the likelihood of you staying there is over 40%. So it's double what random would tell you. And then the likelihood of moving into the upper 20%, right? It should be, if it was perfectly random, it should be 20%. It's 2.5 times lower than that. It's just under 8%. So it can be really difficult. And as I said, I've been fortunate. I work with a lot of clients that have broken out of it. I've learned from them. And frankly, I've kind of done a similar journey myself. So I want to share with you 7 important lessons that we can all take away. And the most powerful are the last 3, so stick around. And the first, we're just going to start with the basics. I don't care how much money you make, you need to be able to save. You need to spend less than what you earn. And I know it's easier to say that than to actually do it. But it's critically important, right? You'll never advance if you can't spend less than what you earn. And some ideas for that is, when you first learn your trade, when you first get a decent paying job, try not to move up too much in your standard of living. Try to keep that minimal. And when you get a raise, think about it, half is for my current self, my current family, and half of this money is for my future self and my future family. So college savings, saving for your retirement, things like that. So again, I know it's hard. Really think about what you can do to save money. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. For Americans, our second largest expense, followed pretty closely behind housing, are car payments. And the average American spends like 12% of their gross pay on transportation. Now that includes your car payment, insurance, gasoline, car repairs, stuff like that. But I think that's an area. It's over $1,000. I think it's $1,200, $1,200 that the average American spends per month on transportation. And I think that's an area that most of us can cut back on expenses without it being too sacrificial, right? The difference between driving a new car and a 5-year-old used car, as long as it's still in good shape and it's running well and it's been well maintained, I think the pain of that switch is probably one of the easiest things to do. So that's number 1. Number 2, and again, these are just the fundamentals. It's not enough to save money. You have to invest your money as well. You need your money to work for you. And if you're putting it in a bank account, you're very likely getting lower than inflation rate on that money. And that money is losing value over time. You need it to gain value. You need to get the power of compounding working for you. So that's step number 2 is to invest the money. Again, it's not enough to just save. Okay, number 3, let me bring out my list here, sorry. Number 3 is to have an emergency fund. You have to have some capacity to withstand surprises, both unexpected expenses, and then, God forbid, if you were to lose your job and you needed time to find another job. it's nice to not have to take the first job that comes along. But if you don't have an emergency fund and you have bills and you have people that are depending on you, there's going to be a lot of pressure to accept the first job that comes along. So an emergency fund can be super important. So really set that up. I think in your working years, first, get the emergency fund that you can. And that might be 3 to 6 months. And I think that's the minimum. For sure, 3 months is the minimum. 100 days to find another job and something that you care about and you love, I think is kind of the minimum, particularly as you get older. And boy, having closer to a year set aside in that emergency fund gives you a lot of flexibility to find the job that's right for you and not have to take the first job that comes along. So number 3 is that emergency fund. And number four is invest in yourself. It's hard to move up the salary ladder and start getting paid more without having additional skills. And it's also hard to excel at what you do if it's not something that you're passionate about. So I think it's super important to invest in yourself, both to learn new skills, but then also to be able to follow your passion. If you always thought it'd be great to learn how to code, you can take a coding boot camp. I've shared in previous videos that I did that. Not that I wanted to work as a coder, but I wanted to know more. We're all using these devices. I'm recording this video on an iPhone. I wanted to know how these devices worked, and I wanted to know how the software works. I wanted to be able to program, at first, relatively simple programs. Eventually, I got to the point where I could program some kind of neat apps. Once you learn the basics, then it's just a matter of putting these building blocks together. So invest in yourself. I think it's critically important. Okay, these are the last 3 that I think are so important. One of the challenges, I came from a lower income family. Neither one of my parents probably ever made more than 3 times minimum wage their whole life. Probably closer to 2 to 2.5 times. But yet, I didn't know that my family didn't have money when I was growing up. They did a great job raising us, so I'm very grateful for that. I never felt like I was in need of anything. So I don't say that to say, my life was challenging, but just to say, neither of my parents had gone to college, and neither of my parents had ever really made a lot of money. So there were a lot of decisions that I had to make that I think a lot of people can ask their parents for advice on, and their parents can help them. In my case, I was navigating things for the first time. So this 5th tip, if I haven't numbered it yet, is really to try to find a mentor to work with. Somebody that's navigated the path that you want to go. Now, if you're in your 30s and 40s, this doesn't have to be somebody that's 60 or 70. This can be somebody that's 3 years ahead of you or 5 years ahead of you. But finding that river guide, I think, is really key. So that's a key piece of advice is finding a mentor to help you out with that. Okay, number 6. I think it's really common when you come from a lower income family to be fearful that what you have created, the progress that you have made, can all be taken away at a moment's notice, right? Again, I didn't grow up feeling like there was anything that I needed that I didn't have, but I knew I wanted some comforts, and I knew I wanted to be able to provide for my family at a higher level than my parents were able to. Now, my grandparents came over as immigrants with very little money, right? So it's just this natural progression. It's kind of the American story, right? My grandparents worked hard. They provided for my parents, and essentially my grandparents were farmers on one side of the family, and on the other side of the family, my father's father, so my paternal grandfather, passed away when my father was like 8 years old, and his mom essentially cleaned homes and did people's laundries, and that's how she provided for the family. And when you have that background, you can be fearful that things are going to be taken away, and so you can be overly cautious. And so number 6 is this fear of failure, and being comfortable putting yourself out there, and pushing yourself and seeing what you can do. The reality is, if you only do things that you can accomplish, that you can succeed at, you're probably over the arc of a lifetime going to leave 50% of your talents on the table, right? We have to be willing to push ourselves and to try things that we're not sure that we're going to be able to accomplish, and not fear that failure. It's not failure, right? It's finding out what you're capable of. And I think most of us are capable of much more than we give ourselves credit to. But if we're afraid of failing, then we won't push ourselves. And I think that's something that people that grow up in more affluent families, I think they have an advantage there. I think they've kind of taught their kids that, you do have to push yourself a little bit, and it is okay if you try something and it doesn't work out. It's not a permanent mark against you, and everything's not going to crumble down around you. So that's number 6, is overcoming that fear of failure. And the 7th one, and probably the one that I found to be the most helpful in my life, and it sounds trite, but I think it's super powerful, is you have to surround yourself with positivity. And I want to say something here, as I listen to myself just say that last statement, it's been the most powerful in my life. It's not like I have this figured out, right? I mean, this is a journey for all of us. And I have made my fair share of mistakes. I have put myself out there hoping I could make something happen. And sometimes I was more successful at that than other times. So I don't want to put it out there that, I've got it figured out. I'm super fortunate in that I get to live through the lives of hundreds of my clients' lives and see what works and what doesn't work. So I just want to put that out there. But again, surrounding yourself with positivity. And, I'm always trying, definitely on a daily basis, and probably for an hour a day, I am listening to things that the purpose of which is to put my mind in the right frame of mind and to be positive. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of books. I'm an Audible books guy, and try to surround myself. My 12 closest, sorry, dogs shocked me there. My 12 closest friends are also positive thinkers and trying their best to be the best version of themselves. And I think surrounding yourself with that is so important. And choosing to avoid, unfortunately there are dysfunctional people in the world. And to the extent you can, to the extent it's not your direct family, just saying, I choose not to be involved in this person's dysfunction. Now, every family has its challenges, and they're family for life. So that's one that you can't unplug from. But the ones that you can, just choose who you hang out with carefully, because it's going to frame your mind. So enough said on that. But I do want to share, back to these books and these podcasts and YouTube videos. Hopefully you view this channel as a positive YouTube video. Leave me a comment. Actually, I'm just going to put this in now. If this video has been helpful, I'm going to close here in a second, but if the video has been helpful, do me a favor, leave me a thumbs up. It really does. Leave me a like. It really does help the algorithm, help us find other people that these videos can be helpful for. Leave me a comment. I love reading the comments. We've got a great community going on. Be careful. There are scammers in the comments. Okay, but I want to get back to the book. If you're like, Azul, that's a great idea, but I don't know, how to start, or, any podcasts that are positive thinking. I'm going to share two. One on the podcast side, there's a guy named Tim Ferriss, and I believe it's RRS, FERRISS. He's had a lot of challenges in his life that he's overcome, and his podcasts, I think, are great. tends to be a very male-centric. I wish he wasn't so male-centric on his show. And the second book I want to recommend is a book called Solve for Happy. The author's name is Mo, and I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, Gawdat, Gawdat. And Mo is just an incredible writer. He's super smart. He headed up the Google X project, which was kind of their laboratory and the next generation of things for Google. So super smart guy. Unfortunately, he lost his son to a mistake that was made during a routine appendicitis surgery, and his 22-year-old son died. And it really caused Mo to rethink life and the meaning of life, and anything that Mo Gawdat writes, I think, is excellent. And I just recently finished his book, Solve for Happy, which I think is super. So I hope this video has been helpful. Like I said, unfortunately, it's harder to break from the lower middle class in the United States into the upper middle class. The stats are stacked against you, but it's not impossible. And I've seen people do it successfully, and I've been fortunate to learn from them some of their lessons, which I'm passing to you today. So I hope you found it helpful. Again, if you did, give me a thumbs up. As the kids say, thumbs for likes and subs for love. If you haven't subscribed yet, think about subscribing. And until next time, I'm Azul, encouraging you to take full advantage of the youth of your senior years. Remember, you're only young once. Let's use this time wisely.